welcome to another installment of Fail Forward Friday. My name is Malesela and Roche. I'm with my co-host
Roche Mamabulo?
Doc Roche Mamabulo.
Okay, yes, apparently, yes.
No, apparently, Doc. And you'll see today, again, this is Fail Forward Friday.
Yeah.
We are a show that showcases failures, but again, like the show says, we're failing forward.
Yeah.
It's a show that basically tries to destigmatize failure, and obviously how it works is I bring a story, Doc brings a story, we talk about the stories, we show where they fail, where they blunders, the different entrepreneurs or the businesses, and we take learnings from it. We believe that learning should come from people that have done it before.
Yeah. So, do the honorable thing, watch, subscribe.
Yes.
But also you are more than welcome to contribute to the show.
Yes.
Share your thoughts, what stories you want us to cover.
Yes.
And we'll do our work, research, and come back and share the stories.
Yeah, in fact, we could even invite you.
Yeah, why not?
With that said, we actually, you'll see Doc and I in one camera frame today. We actually have a guest with us, Doc. A fellow...
friends of the show.
Friends of the show.
Yeah.
Friends of the show. You can introduce yourself.
My name is Vuyile Gabuza, and
Gabuza, the player, soccer player.
Yeah, like the soccer player. I'm actually a Pirates fan too.
You
but
see
no
that,
relation,
yeah.
no relation.
Why did people call you?
Yes, Gabuza like that. But yeah, I'm a friend of the show, and I have a story to discuss and unpack with the guys. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, like we said, he actually reached out to us and said, hey, I have an interesting story. We went and did the research, and Doc, this is what hell of a story, yeah.
Yeah, it is an interesting story. I've learned so much from the story.
Yes.
And I'm looking forord to hearing your thoughts on the story.
I have quite a lot of questions that maybe you can decipher and just tell us about it. So let's hand it over to you, Vuyile.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about how the Reliance Group split and how they were different, fortunes for the two. For those of you in the audience don't know, Reliance was one big conglomerate that was founded in 1958 by a gentleman called Dhirubhai Ambani, who had obviously gone to work in Yemen for a period of time. It's actually an inspiring story in itself, in that he was a petrol attendant at some point in Yemen, and then he got the idea to start a textile company, and then from textiles they branched out into petrochemicals and the petrochemical industry, and then it becomes this massive conglomerate in India, where they are from. You might know his oldest son, Mukesh Ambani,
yes.
Who is one of the wealthiest people in the world. But a lot of people, speaking on failures, is that a lot of people don't know that Mr. Ambani has a little brother, Anil Ambani, who at some point in 2008 was actually the sixth richest man in the world, and he is, as we know, because you don't know, that he is no longer the sixth wealthiest man in the world. And now we're going to obviously discuss what happened. What was the difference that made the one Ambani brother become, this wealthy individual, and what happened from, one riches to rags, so to speak.
Okay. So that's the failure.
Yeah, that's the failure. Yeah.
From the one brother.
Yeah, from the one brother, yes.
Nice.
Okay.
All right. So maybe take us through from, the dad, how he built the whole thing. You have just told us he started as a petrol attendant, then textiles, then petrol, and, the whole thing. And, at some point, he had to hand over the business, right?
Yes. Okay.
Just take us through that.
Okay, in the interest of time, I'm gonna cut it short. I'm a talker. So, like I said, it was founded in the late 50s, Reliance, initially with a partner, and they had the idea to export, textiles from India to Yemen. Eventually it grows, the partner split, and so he does it alone. Mr. Ambani Sr. does it on his own. And then it grows they branch out from initially to from textiles to polyester, and then from polyester that's probably in the 80s now, if I stand to be corrected, audience. But they end up by the 80s they're doing petrochemicals as well. So what happens is in connection to our story is that in 1986, Ambani Senior, now Reliance is obviously this Indian juggernaut, and Mukesh and his younger brother Anil, they're now involved in the family business, but at some point in 1986, Ambani, the older Ambani, the father, suffers a stroke, and so he can't function in the same way that he can't run the business on his own, and his mortality, so to speak, comes to the front of you, as we will all of us, and through that mortality, the sons start to become more involved in running the company, and this is where the fork in the road, you could say, starts to show itself, because the two Ambani brothers, by all accounts, are very different personalities. The older Mukesh seems to be an introvert, very within himself, whereas his younger brother was flashier. He was the one who was actually, and their roles reflect that, in that Mukesh ran the company in line with that, so he ran it with his dad, whereas Anil sort of did the corporate affairs. He would speak to outside sources,
the
this
PR.
and that. He was a PR guy, and to that, there's a lot of family issues as well, like how Mukesh married the wife
Bollywood
that is
star.
That's
Anil,
yes.
So Mukesh marries the family approved woman, whereas Anil goes and marries a Bollywood star who had a very controversial relationship prior to that, because in India at the time you couldn't really live in with somebody that you were not married to, and Anil's wife had done that for a few years, and so it's like, how could you do this? How could you do that? And so that sort of creates a rift between them and the family, and this carries on, as they grow in their roles in the 90s. I'm just gonna, a brief explanation is that they go into telecoms, they go into entertainment, they go into various other industries in the 90s as well, beyond the petrochemicals. But they were still in nascent stage at that point. So the brothers again have disagreements throughout this period. And for 16 years, they run the business, it grows, they disagree. And then in 2002, Mr. Ambani has another stroke, I believe, and he passes away this time.
Yes.
Yeah. And yes, Dhirubhai Ambani and now they have to run the company together.
And there's no will.
Yeah, and there's no will. Yes, yes, he dies intestate.
Like serious move on.
Imagine,
It is move on with that one.
And we often think that intestate succession is like this thing where regular people on the street happens. This was a multi-billion-dollar company in the second most populous
Do we
nation.
know why though? Do we know why he didn't have? For someone at that level,
we have no idea. Nobody knows.
It's such a weird thing.
That's what happened.
You know what I think, Doc? It's very. I'll be honest, nah. If I was him as well, I wouldn't have a will, because who do you say runs something? Because the other thing is, I'm guessing, and maybe I could be wrong, but it could be that he didn't want to say he favors one brother over the other, right?
Okay.
And to be honest, I like what the mother did, and obviously you'll speak to that. And what I think would happen in that sense, and obviously Indian families are like very, when we say tight-knit, it's an understatement.
They live in the same house.
They live in the same house.
Yeah.
And this man bought a whole hotel, renovated it. This is the father. And then everybody stayed there with their wives, everything.
Right. Well,
so we'll get to that. But that's what I'm thinking, is that I'm sure to some extent he probably didn't want to just favor one over the other, and therefore they'll fight it out.
Okay.
But it seems by all accounts like there was already, I think the seeds had already been sown that like Mukesh was like the responsible one, the one that was favored by his father. When you read, like there's a novel that sort of details I think they call it the Gas Wars, if I remember.
Is it? Based on the family?
Like there's a novel that was written like a semi-private, those ones so that talks about like how.
Listen, Doc is probably gonna go find it after this.
Yeah, of course.
I think I'll just
yes, please share that.
But so there's a novel that speaks about like how there was obviously, like Mali was saying, there was a rift, and they all live in the same house, and they have all these issues, and so
something like I saw somewhere it says like for 10 years they didn't speak to each other even though they lived in one
in the same house. Yes.
Like,
we'll
it's
get
crazy.
to that. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So Anil is like the black sheep that's the socialite, that's really enjoying. Yeah, the younger one. And then Mukesh is the older brother, the responsible one. So the Dhirubhai obviously passes away, and then this is when he becomes, and then Mukesh becomes the chairman of Reliance Group, and then the vice becomes Anil, and they bicker, they have very different ideas on where the business will go to, and to the point of failure. Anil is very partial to the newer industries, like telecoms, like gas,
emerging industries,
the emerging industries at the time in India, whereas Mukesh was a lot more conservative,
traditional
in his approach. And
it almost reminds me of the story in the Bible of Abraham and Lot.
It is because Lot saw the lush, and Abraham stayed where he was.
In the drought,
And then we get to that point where they disagree. Remember, this is a $1 billion company, and so when they fight and bicker, there are contracts at stake, there are potential, and in this era, it was an era when governments, sure, Doc, you're the senior. You remember a time where governments were very big on infrastructure projects in underdeveloped countries. So there was a whole lot of that, a whole lot of bidding for these contracts and all of that. So that's the backdrop. And so Anil sees that and he's like, we can go and do this. The older brother says no. They bicker, they continue to bicker. It goes in and out of court, and eventually, their mother steps in. And
it goes to the media, by the way.
It goes
to the media, and the one is blaming the other,
and then they say, "Oh no, we've actually made up at some point."
Yes.
And then the entire opposite thing, and people find out that no, they actually were not. They hadn't made up, and so I think in 2005 now, this is where we are, and then they have the split happens because the mother is tired of them.
Yeah. But also I think I read somewhere that they were so big that their bickering had the potential to even affect the economy.
Yes, it was. And it was, because investor confidence, and so on,
So that's how big these guys were.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was in the interest of the country itself, for them to solve
settle that
this
difference.
dispute.
Yeah.
Yes, they didn't, and so eventually they split, and so it splits into
2005.
in 2005. Yes. With Mukesh taking all the core industries, so the traditional industries that they'd been involved in for the longest time, like the petrochemicals industry, the polyester,
energy.
all of that, that sort of thing. And then the energy projects that Anil did take on were gas, and it was very new at the time. And then he also wanted to go into telecommunications and providing electricity.
So that's where the whole era of cell phones was coming.
It's cell phones and so on and so forth. And so then they split, and initially it looks like everybody is seemingly happy because both companies, they go on like the growth, race that was happening in the developing world at the time, like it happened here in South Africa as well, where everybody was growing before 2008. And then it culminates in 2008 where we started the story. And Anil is like the sixth richest man. He seems like he's the maverick who did the right thing. He chose the right industries because, Reliance Communications and the energy, he lands this big energy project, I think in Uttar Pradesh, if I'm not mistaken. And so, but now he needs gas to fund that. And so we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But long story short, in 2008, his net worth was $45 billion, and he was the sixth richest man in the world. Guess who the fifth richest man in the world was, though? His older brother.
By 1 billion.
Yes, by 1 billion. Yes, by 1 billion. And this does not make him happy, obviously. And that would be the peak of his story, because now, as we all know, it starts to fall apart then because of the nature of the industry. He needs more capital, and he's been borrowing money from international investors, from the Indian government. The financial crisis happens, the economy crashes, and now he can't get the same money that he needed to. And then there's something else that happens that he didn't quite plan for. 3G comes into the scene, you know, and he doesn't have the infrastructure for it, and so all of these things sort of, and then that's when the snowball effect, and then he still needs gas, and the only person he can get gas from, you know, reliably, is his older brother who he has a dispute with, and so that adds up to it. So this major project fails. You know,
and I understand there was an MTN deal also.
Yes, we're gonna get to that. So I think it was in 2010, 2011. He sees that he needs funding for his telecommunications project because of, you know, the Indian government is now, all of these investors that he'd been banking on that were giving him all of this leverage. Were not as willing to give it as before. So he needs a big partner, and here comes MTN. MTN is obviously at this point, for those who don't know, MTN was one of the larger telecommunications companies. They had operations in the Middle East and not just
all of Africa.
Not just,
it is obviously still the biggest in Africa.
Yes, it still is, absolutely. And they offer to merge with Reliance Communications. And the merger goes through, but now we have to go back a bit to when this deal between him and his brother was negotiated.
To split the assets,
to split. So they had a non-compete clause for 10 years, right? And also if he needed, long story short, he needed I don't want to get into the legal nitty-gritty too much, but he needed the permission of his brother to get this deal to go through.
First right of refusal.
Right of refusal, where any sale would happen. Yes, you're quite correct, Doc. But now Mukesh wouldn't give it to him.
I was about to say, Doc, that's the one where I think, man, he knew what he was doing.
No,
he definitely knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
So yes, he did fail, but to a certain extent, his brother kind of like, he bit him there in the
So fail, love and war. All is fair, love and war.
And yes, so the right of first refusal had been negotiated. For those of you who don't know that before you there's
you sell to
options,
someone else.
It's like an options where it's often negotiated into sales, where like if you sell to somebody else, you have to give this person
a certain cut.
A certain like whether they get
the option has to go to the first
to go through to decide whether they want to step in instead.
So the MTN deal was like you can't offer MTN.
Yeah, you can't offer. He can't offer.
Yeah.
Until he does it first. But now Mukesh wasn't giving that and eventually MTN, fearing that this thing is gonna fall apart, it was gonna get messy. Effectively, they pull out of the deal. He has no financing.
Yeah,
and now and there's something else that's also seemingly minor at the time. So I said earlier that Mukesh was vice chairman when his dad was alive of Reliance. So he had negotiated. So he had sort of started that communication company that his brother had, and. So SIM card technology, there's GSM, which most of us use, and I forgot the other one now. But now they'd gone with the latter, but that only had a certain
CDMA.
Yeah, CDMA. That's the word. So CDMA only allows for a 2 and a 3G bandwidth. Yeah. But now there was 4G. Yeah. You know, and India was vastly, was becoming this gold mine for 4G connection.
I think one of the things that they when I was researching as well, they talk about how he had borrowed so much money for 3G.
Yes.
But didn't realize that 4G obviously was going to come. And when it eventually came, he didn't have the financing to do it, hence the MTN thing.
Yes.
And because the MTN thing couldn't happen, he couldn't have the backing of anyone to do that big deal. And obviously then what that means, and at the time I think they were the biggest telecom in the...
They were actually at the time, up until in 2008, when it was at its peak, Reliance Communications was India's biggest, cellular or telecoms provider. But now Mali's, the issue that you just mentioned was now this thing, he can't expand, he can't go big because nobody wants to finance him. The MTN deal fell apart. And
for those who and how actually 3G and 4G technology works is that the more G's, basically, if I could put it that way for like a better words, 2G can span a longer distance. So you don't have to have a lot of network towers for 2G. 3G, you just have a bit more. 4G, even more. So meaning you actually have more closer connections. So a tower won't be, I think the radius is like, 14 Ks or something like that. So it's quite close, or 15 Ks, it's quite close. 5G even more. So that's the thing, is that you actually then, if you're actually bringing up like a 4G from a 3G, there's a lot of work you actually have to infrastructure that you need to invest in.
So it's like adding more towers.
Yeah, you add more towers.
Okay.
Which
is capital intensive.
And you have to build, you need to do the construction to do it, you need to do the steel, all of those things. Very capital intensive to get
which requires money.
Up.
Yeah.
Money you couldn't get anymore.
Yes.
Okay. So, but guess who could? Mukesh.
Yeah.
Because his industries were quite stable at the time.
And that's why he did.
So then in another sort of dagger in his brother's, another nail in the coffin, he starts up his own telecommunications
after 10 years,
company. Yes. After 10 years, the non-compete is done, remember, called Geo.
Yeah.
And Geo has 4G.
Yes. It starts with 4G.
It starts with 4G from the onset. He even offers free data and all of these services that he knows his brother can't provide. And that effectively spells the end. It didn't end there, but it effectively spelled the end for Reliance Communications. And so, but he still owes money. With all of these failures, he still owes, because he had committed so much money to get these 3G towers from Ericsson, from all of these people, and then all these people start taking him to court. Eventually,
the Chinese banks as well.
That comes a bit later now. So initially it was investors from Europe and
Ericsson as well.
Ericsson being one of them. They were the most notable because there was an 80, I think it was about $80 million.
77 million.
Around that much. Where he obviously owed, he can't pay them, and they took him to court. They wanted to arrest him. If he didn't pay, he would be arrested. And nobody wants to give him this money to pay it off. But so eventually they have talks in the back door. Somebody does. Guess who?
The brother.
The brother. But effectively, anecdotally, apparently, he had to effectively beg his brother, who he had all this enmity with, by the way, for him to stump up this money. He pays it off, and he's.
So I saw in one of the YouTube things, I think, Doc, you're also watching the same one, where they say that the brother did it because he did not want the Ambani name to go down.
Family name.
Yes, effectively. Yeah.
But I mean, after that, he still goes into that bankruptcy with all the, as you're saying, coming to the Chinese and stuff, and he doesn't help him there. It's actually crazy.
It is. It is crazy.
But anyway,
yeah. So then he goes to, he's still trying to keep this house of cards. I'm standing up. Oh, and before we carry on, we spoke about a major gas project. It fell through because he couldn't get gas, because they couldn't get an agreement between him and Mukesh for how much per I think metric. It's a certain metric unit that you measure the gas with. So they had agreed upon in 2005 a certain amount, but now the Indian government was saying that it would be uncompetitive for them to continue at that same rate. Yeah,
because it will take that sector down.
Yes. And so they had to there was a court order for them to go and renegotiate. But now the older brother, who can't do this, doesn't want to renegotiate. Yeah. And so effectively that gas project, which was also one of the pillars that he had built his premise on, that falls apart. So he can't carry on with that project. He abandons it. So all of these glamorous industries, that when he also went into entertainment that had, which was a lot more successful, but now he had to sell off the Reliance Entertainment business, which was cinemas, the film, and he had also acquired a major stake, a significant stake in DreamWorks, DreamWorks from Steven Spielberg at the time, and that was semi-decent, but he had to sell that off. I think he sold it to Adani. To the Adanis, and so he sells that off. He
obviously won't sell it to his brother. He obviously won't sell it to his brother.
He won't. He obviously not. So all of these things are falling apart. Everything he had done. Because he had effectively committed to the flashy industries without really making room for contingencies. Without making room for a change in circumstances, and oftentimes, you know, there's a thin line between success and failure.
Yeah.
It is circumstance, you know.
Yeah.
We're seeing it now with how the European and American electric car market is effectively
Falling apart.
Yeah, falling apart because the regulatory backing and the government backing was gone, and people didn't adopt it the way they were supposed to. So it was a similar thing where, you know, the failure is a combination of many tiny things, but ultimately circumstance and, like we were saying, you know, family issues, and how, you know, your form of petty, which is, you know, you don't want to give, you change the locks in the house because your mother's house, your mother passed away, and your brother who was bequeathed this property, you know, wants to kick you out, so you change the lock so you can't, you know, come inside the house. But now it's happening at a multi-billion
at a grand scale,
at a grand scale, you know, with politicians involved, you know, with people's lives, you know, because ultimately these infrastructure projects, there's people who are employed, you know, who benefit, you know, from these things, and who get you know, unfairly prejudiced when.
Doug, I have a question on that, right? And I want you to maybe give us a bit again with your XP. What's the right level of attempting to go all in on something that could pay now, but also having a long-term view with that? Because in this sense, obviously, between the two brothers, the one was more conservative and was able to build steadily.
Yeah.
And obviously over the long run, it was good for him. But the other one saw opportunity and wanted to go for the opportunity, but did not have a clear ROI strategy in place.
Look, I mean, I looked at their styles, that their leadership styles and management styles.
Yes.
And is it the older one?
Yes, Mukesh.
Mukesh is more very, I mean, to your point, conservative, very cautious.
Yeah.
He thinks things through.
Yes.
And so when he looks at something, he looks at it beyond just the short term. He takes a long-term view to it. And Anil comes across as this spontaneous guy.
He's a salesman.
He's a salesman.
He's a salesman.
So buy now, we'll make it work later, type of a thing.
Like Steve Jobs almost. And that's actually a good example. To your point, you know, Steve Jobs was basically there's the infamous story of how the iPhone wasn't even working when he had presented it to the public.
Yeah.
But you know what the funny part is? When I read the story, I mean, for me, it hit home because I have a younger brother who's 2 years younger than me.
Are you a billionaire, Doc?
No, I'm getting there.
Oh, you're getting there. Okay.
But as I try to think, I mean, it's so similar, right? He's like the extrovert at all. Everybody knows him. You know, I went to boarding school, right? Yes. So I went to boarding school, I went to varsity, whatever. So they call my mom with my name, right? So Roche, right? So there's these kids from next door, right? They hear people calling my mom with my name, but they never see me. They see my brother. So they're like, but why do you call him with someone? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Where did you see this one?
Yes.
Right? So that's how popular he was. But he's Anil, like through and through. But I understand why Mukesh would want to, how he behaved this way, because he's the firstborn. He's the deputy parent.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So he from a very young age, you have a brother, so you have to lead by example. Right. From that young age, he had to be the sober one, the one who thinks things through, who's more responsible. And there's a thing about last borns. I don't know if last borns are the family comedian. Right? They say that. It's not me, but they say that
the last born at home, she's the deputy parent.
Is it?
That's literally how
yes, you do get that.
That's interesting.
But you know, I've heard people say actually the last ones are the family comedians. Because they are the ones that everybody plays with, they entertain the family.
And they don't carry the burden of responsibility that older siblings tend to.
So, and I think when I read the story, I'm like, Anil is a typical family comedian. He doesn't. My brother's like that. He was defying everything. Like when you were saying that Anil brought the the wife that doesn't, conform to family norms. That's my brother. Right? Like, we go to boarding school. Like, I don't like that boarding school. I hate that boarding school. I don't want to go there. And he forces my parents to say, I don't want to go there.
I need to go somewhere else.
And with me, they were very strict. They were like,
they're starting with you.
And he's like, okay, where do you want to go? It's like, I want to go to this high school. They don't wear uniform. Like, and he got in, right? I mean, I love him.
What high school is this for?
Promet. There was a Promet just outside Mamlud called Promet. I mean, back in the day,
uniform. Like American.
Yes, exactly. And he was like, I want to go to that one. My parents just gave in, right? So he's so when I look at Anil is a typical let's party, let's just do this thing and see how it goes.
Yeah.
So he goes into industries where he doesn't have money. He goes and he relies on debt, right?
And look, to a certain extent, I think debt is not a bad thing.
No, not true.
It's how to use the debt.
Yes, and overindulging on
it. Yes, where you rely only on it.
Because there's a lot of industries that where leverage is the industry norm.
Yes.
But I mean, when you get into telecoms, it's a new industry.
It is.
Globally, it's a new industry.
Yeah, it has to get that. Yeah.
The thing with debt is you need to have that relationship between debt and income, right?
Yes.
So you need to be able to tie
That's a good way of,
the two. To say, if I take debt,
this is when.
This is how the revenue is going to come in.
ROI will look like this. Yeah. That's a lot of financial engineering you have to put in there.
And being a PR person,
Yeah, man. When you sales people,
you look at this thing, it looks sexy, from the outside. And you get in. But what you don't understand is there's a whole back office that you need to take care of.
True.
And if the back office doesn't work, the front office is...
I think to a certain extent, and obviously you can chip in here, but I don't think, for me, from what I understand as well, is it's not to say that his back office per se was bad, because it was the biggest telecom in India.
But I think it was a bit of a paper tiger in that, like, to Doc's point, is that I think he underestimated the sheer might or the sheer weight of investment you need to make that, especially in a country where there wasn't much of it. You're starting from scratch. There wasn't much of it at the time in the industry that he wanted to go in. And so when you don't project accurately and you don't make provision for contingencies, and also when you're very patronage reliant as well, as it often is. It's not a uniquely Reliance thing. All major industries in India to an extent you need a degree of patronage to succeed. And so once those things change, it can easily
you take all your chips. You're playing at a casino. So Mukesh says, I'm taking half of my chips and I'm putting them on the thing, and I'm keeping the other half. Anil says, no, baby.
All on black.
I have confidence in this one. Put everything in there.
And remember, Mukesh also had the added benefit of industries that were always going to work.
Yeah, 100%.
Regardless of their solid foundations anyway.
So you could say Mukesh was more like a Warren Buffett, right? Established industries that he knows, that he sure can say this one.
But it would be interesting to understand, how did they pick the sides? Did Mukesh just say, I want this one, I want this? Because that's the other thing, right?
Yeah.
Mukesh could have easily been like, underplayed the fact that petrol is, and tricked his brother into getting that other one.
I think one of the underrated roles, and not that you underrated, but I think one of the stories, as I was doing this whole thing, one of the stories that I think is a critical story that came through and not really being celebrated is the role that the mother played.
Yes.
In negotiating a truce between the two. And because if she, as the matriarch, didn't step forward, I mean, those guys would have collapsed the whole thing.
I'm sure. It's that thing where it's the Cold War we spoke about in the last episode, where it's that whole 50, and it will be interesting to go deeper into like the 50-50 companies that fail because of a 50-50 thing. Because at the end of the day, if nothing is moving, something is dying.
And And so last week we discussed the Adidas and Adi and the brother, right?
Yes.
And it's similar story.
Yeah.
The feud, even when on their deathbed, when they died, they were buried on the same cemetery, opposite sides.
And they didn't go to each other's funerals.
And
Families didn't go to funerals,
And fortunately with this one, because the other one, it was game over, he had no choice but to give it.
Yes.
Right, then the other one had to rescue him. So you can argue that at least there was a bit of...
he knew what he was doing.
He knew
exactly what he was doing.
I think because he was the senior and he had more exposure to the inner workings of the company that his brother might have. This is just my opinion. I think he knew. He's like, no, you can have those. Because remember, he's the one who set them up anyway. When he was in it, so he knew what was going to have a solid foundation and what was not. So he was happy to.
But I think also before the dad passed, he was actually also at the forefront of running those divisions, right? Yes. So I think it made sense when they were negotiating the split.
I'm going to give you an example of why I say, look, family feuds are. I think the only reason this whole thing happened is that there was a family feud. It's the ignite. I'm not saying it's the only. Sorry, it's not the only reason, but it's the primary reason why he was able to fail. Is that this whole family feud thing was out of control.
Absolutely.
The reason I say that is I see, and we're just talking about it off air now, but we're talking about how LVMH and how what's his name? Bernardo No and his family run LVMH. They run, every single one of his kids run a section of LVMH, and they're successful at running it successfully. And one of the podcasts I listened to, Doc, I actually sent it to you, they were saying how the example was, how is it that these Bernard is building this company in such a way where all of the kids are actually stars, and all of them, chances are, could run this company successfully anyway. And the other thing is Rupert Murdoch, another side where that was a family feud, you know what I mean? But luckily for him, they were obviously able to sell it off before.
And to your point, Mali, we can also even go closer to India. Look at the Tata family.
Yes.
When the succession plan, funny enough, before it came back to the direct line. Yeah. I think the name is JDR Tata or JRD, one of the
JRD,
two.
yeah,
before the current, I think Ratan Tata, who's the most famous. He was a distant cousin of the original Tata family, and he went and stepped in and ran, the Tata business, and he grew it further before it went to
back into the other family,
to Ratan Tata. And look at how they could have easily split. And did even in the face of, because Tata was already established in the 20th century already, and they had serious challenges from the Indian government because they wanted to become a socialist nation. So they had weathered that storm because of the collaboration of the family, and now it's this massive juggernaut. And then compare with the Reliance company, that could have been way more. It could have been much bigger than, even though obviously Mukesh is successful, but it could be much. It could have been much bigger had they worked their differences out and stayed together.
So if you take a couple of steps forward in the story, where now Mukesh has got 3 kids.
Yes.
2 boys and 1 girl.
Yeah, and the boy is actually...
And he's handing over the business to the 3rd generation now. And they each... Because I think obviously he's learned from the experience of his dad and his brother. And what he has then done is he has sort of allocated certain sections to each of the 3 kids. So pretty much to what you're saying, but I think coming to the question that you asked, how do you allocate these things? I think to a large extent it goes with obviously the character of the kids. You tend to look at who's more adventurous, who's more brave, who's more this, who's more this. And typically the Anil, with his flamboyant lifestyle, he lends himself to, because of his character, to the more exciting telecoms, entertainment, because that's his space. And I would think he feels far much better placed in that sector. And the other one, because he's conservative and cautious, he would choose sort of like your safer industries, so to speak, or proven industries, because that lends those industries, the character of those industries are similar to him as a person as well. And of course, you look at who has the ability to grow these things.
Yeah.
So I think that formula is what he's taking into
Into consideration.
Yeah. When he looks at his kids
Yeah.
and allocate responsibilities.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not splitting the whole thing.
Yeah.
But they are running businesses within the group.
Yes. You know, Doc, one of the things I'm a bit, how can I put it? I'm all for family taking over, right? But I'm more for whoever deserves it takes over. If you within the family want it more as a child, you need to show. And what I mean by show is, we'll trust you with a small part and see that you grow it. Because I need to see that once you can grow that, I can give you something else that you can grow. I'm not going to give anyone a CEO position because they are.
So you're going to do the apprentice.
But not even that, you're fired. you know who I'm thinking of is IKEA and how his succession plan worked out, right? Because none of his children run IKEA.
Yeah.
Right? He gave them share, and the way he set everything up is that none of them can actually can actually sell their share in IKEA.
Yeah. No.
You
So I mean, there's multiple ways. I mean, look at, for instance, what Warren Buffett.
Yes.
Warren Buffett is doing.
Well,
Warren is like, I'm giving you your share, and then I'm giving everything else to charity. And you guys must build your own things. But what I've learned with entrepreneurs who built these empires is they want their legacies to succeed.
It's a pride thing, obviously.
So I want to build this so that it can last. Because I think I was reading a paper where it says
the third generation.
The third generations,
usually
fourth generations mess it up.
Yeah.
Fourth generations mess it up. So if you're lucky, the second, third, fourth generations, they mess it up, right? So you want to be able to build this thing to last as long as
100%.
possible when you're no longer there. So you want to give it to someone who will do that.
Yes.
But at the same time, you don't want to alienate the other siblings as well. To your
But
point.
that's what I'm saying. It's not even to say, for me, it's not even the right sibling. It's the right person. Meaning, if it's someone outside of the siblings.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
Pick and Pay did that.
Exactly,
Raymond Ackerman, they appointed a CEO who was competent enough to run
grow
Pick
the
and
company.
Pay.
Exactly.
And sometimes you find that the kids are not even interested
But that's what I'm saying.
in the business, right? And then you bring...
And you're forcing them now, they're going to squander the whole thing anyway.
But I think with family businesses, and if you grow up in that, because India is infamous.
That's true.
It's very
true.
familiar.
All of them is
It's all
family,
very
it's
insular and so
like you were
there's big
saying,
on
we all
succession.
stay in the same house,
Yeah.
I think the case, correct me if I'm wrong, audience or anybody, is that the case system also plays a role in that if you come from a family that's in a certain case, you're expected to stay in your lane, so to speak. So I think that also plays a role with succession plans that you would want, because that's what our family does.
So the CEO, the model that you talk about is more American.
Yeah.
American has got this celebrity CEO thing where you are Jack Welch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you
Or
come
Jamie
in-
Dimon.
Yes. You come from an outsider, you
Yeah.
you increase shareholder value.
Yeah.
And you are this hero. And remember we spoke about this when we were talking about leadership styles.
Yes.
To say the American leadership style is hero worship. It's individualistic.
Yeah.
And the Asian leadership style is more family centered.
Because societies are generally geared that way. Whereas in Western countries, it's all about the hero, the one guy they want to focus and zero in on.
So we have the Ambani brothers, the Gupta brothers. It's always these brothers, or Tata family. It's all this family thing, Adani family,
Toyota family.
So it's more family orientated. So they want to keep the name, the family name, going. And I think the kids also grow up in that type of an environment. And
I think that's the thing is chances are that, and it'll be actually, and we'll probably have to close now, but you know what would be even more interesting, Doc, is, and really, it'll be how technology, because succession planning and technology just sounds interesting. Because I mean, how do you do succession planning in technology if maybe your child did not do any computer science, or you know what I mean? And obviously by the time, I'm sure they would have done computer science, they would have grown up. I mean, I think of Elon's kids, or I think of what's his name, Mark Zuckerberg's kids. Like all those, do they even think of doing succession planning, or do they holdings?
I'll be very cautious. I don't know if Elon Musk's kids still have anything to inherit after this 4 years. But anyway,
Doug, we know Elon is gonna take over the world. Let's not lie ourselves.
I'm willing to write that down. I think it's Napoleon Bonaparte. I think that's
it's the beginning of the end.
I don't think so. You know what? And now we're going into another.
I think it's the end.
I think that man has done so much and is doing so much that he's one of the what does Thanos say in the movie? I'm inevitable. The man is inevitable.
Nah. He was inevitable. What he has done now, he's turned the world against him.
Flew too close to the sun.
He's no, the one who flew closer to the sun.
Hyperion.
He's Icarus. He flew close to the sun. He thought he's invincible, and he flew close.
I think that all of this is just it's human behavior, Doug. He'll come back.
I doubt. But anyway, let's have another session like this next year. This time,
okay.
Yeah,
and talk about Elon.
We'll be marking the end of an era.
Mark my words. I don't think that man is a. He's
you know the share price of Tesla is tanked, right?
But the thing is, it's never. It's done that before.
No. This time is like not at a rate.
But how much is it now? Isn't it like? Isn't it worth 500-600?
Yeah, but it's on the downward spiral.
But it's done that before.
No.
Then it went straight.
No. This time it's not going up. This time,
I feel like there's a vested interest in both sides here.
No. I mean, I think we're gonna have a case study with Elon Musk and mixing business with politics.
Sure.
Yeah. I think
we'll see. That
case study. Let me give you an example. What he has done, he's miscalculated to think that the majority of the Republican or MAGA voters are people who buy electric cars.
Sure,
they're not people who buy electric cars.
No, 100%.
People who buy electric cars are progressive thinkers, people who think beyond. And now he's backing a president who hates electric cars.
And I think also strategically, he's using the same playbook he's used.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give you guys one of the things.
Type of,
one of the things why I say he's inevitable. It's not electric cars only. The things that he's doing all over.
I don't know.
Starlinks and all of these things.
But Starlinks, they're cancelling contracts. No. Canada is cancelled. Mexico is cancelled.
Obviously because of this whole thing is happening.
Beginning.
But dog, let's be honest.
Who's gonna sign Starlink?
Yeah.
Who's gonna sign Starlink?
A lot of you.
Europe is out. They're pissing Europe off. They're sanctioning, but they're issuing not sanctions, tariffs on Europe. They're issuing tariffs on Canada. They're issuing tariffs on people who are their allies. Who's going to sign
funny
Starlink?
enough, to your point, they issued tariffs on the UK, and I think it was one of Australia, New Zealand, and the US has a trade surplus. So they have a favorable relationship.
How do you do that?
No, that's a Trump thing.
Yeah, but he's part of the Trump.
Mark my words.
In fact, he's the president of the US. Trump is ceremonial.
Did you see that picture where Trump is looking at him like?
Yes.
And Elon is standing and they're like, here's the senior partner here.
Yeah. So anyway, is that the pod?
That is the pod.
On that note, season 2. Elon Musk is coming, but not now.
Okay, not now. Yes. Give it 6 months, Doc. We'll see what's happening in 6 months, right? Okay, cool.
I'm tracking the share price.
Okay. But again, thank you so much. Everyone.
I mean, it feels like we can go on this.
And we can. And you know how the other episodes have been so long.
Yeah.
But today we have to cut it short. Thank you, Vuyile, for coming on board.
Yes. Thank you so much. I have a feeling it's not the last time we
No, it won't. He has a lot of stories.
I have a lot to say.
Okay.
All
right.
You can even lie to us if you want. You never know.
But thank you. That was quite an insightful.
Very, very good insight.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and we'll see you next time.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
Like, subscribe, and yes, comment on the channel. If you want to be on the show, let us know what story you're talking about. We'll do research. We'll call you up. And yes, it'll be quite interesting to see how other people fail forward.
Yeah.
Thank you from myself, Malesela and
Roche.
See you next time.
Right, cheers. Vuyile Gabuza.
Yes, cheers.
Thank you, guys. Awesome.